Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed News Corner. It's been a relatively slow news week this week. A lot of that is down to Mobile World Congress, which kicked off earlier this week in Barcelona. If you're interested in mobile tech and phones, well, I'm sure there's been a lot of interesting stuff for you, but as far as PC hardware is concerned, most interesting developments are a bit on pause until MWC is over. First topic I want to cover is just a brief note on AMD's Ryzen mobile driver release. This is something AMD promised would happen at CES, and they've just managed to slip it in at the end of February through the release of Radeon software 19.2.3. Aside from a set of improvements for owners of desktop cards and other discrete GPUs, these are the first generic drivers to support Ryzen mobile APUs, which is a major milestone for the platform. The lack of drivers prior to now is something a lot of users have complained about continually since the launch, which was more than a year ago now. Anyway, a number of you guys have asked us to cover this. I've been testing the drivers myself on an original Ryzen mobile laptop, and I'll have more to share on that tomorrow. But if you do own a Ryzen mobile laptop, please go and download these generic drivers and try them out for yourselves. They should work on any Ryzen mobile laptop, which is great to see. The USB Implementers Forum will make USB naming even more confusing and ridiculous later this year with the introduction of USB 3.2. Apparently the whole USB 3.0, USB 3.1, Gen 1, Gen 2 thing wasn't already terrible enough, because we're set to get a higher tier providing faster speeds called USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2. Yep, that's the actual name they chose. The big update here is a jump in total bandwidth to 20 gigabits per second, up from 10 gigabits per second with USB 3.1 Gen 2. You'll need a USB Type-C cable for these speeds, but it sounds as though there won't be any change to connectors or cables to support this new mode. And the reason it's called USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2 is it uses two USB-C channels, so two 10 gigabit per second channels for a total of 20 gigabits per second. USB 3.2 will also absorb the older branding of USB 3.1. So USB 3.1 Gen 1 becomes USB 3.2 Gen 1, supporting 5 gigabits per second of bandwidth. USB 3.1 Gen 2 becomes USB 3.2 Gen 2, supporting 10 gigabits per second of bandwidth. But because some older products will still be branded as USB 3.1 or even USB 3.0, all sorts of confusion comes into play. Is USB 3.2 Gen 1 faster than USB 3.0? Well, technically no, they are the same, but it sounds like it based on the name. Surely the best option would have been calling the 5 gigabit per second spec USB 3.0, the 10 gigabit per second spec USB 3.1, and then the new 20 gigabit per second spec USB 3.2. That would have been nice and simple, easy to understand. But instead, the USB Implementers Forum wanted to absorb the old brands into a new spec, and that's what's going to create a pretty huge mess in the market. We should start to see the first USB 3.2 devices this year, presumably supporting Gen 2 by 2, although there's no word on exactly where they'll crop up, considering the first devices will require a discrete USB 3.2 controller. We're probably looking at enthusiast-grade motherboards first, followed by peripherals down the line, probably in 2020. One of the cool non-phone things announced at MWC were the first 1TB microSD cards from both SanDisk, aka Western Digital, and Micron. It's pretty remarkable that we now have a full 1TB of storage available in a chip that's as small as a microSD card. I know these sorts of things do keep increasing in capacity, and it wasn't too long ago that we got the first 512 gig microSDs, but compared to traditional SSDs, there's something special about the tininess of microSD. Both cards using 96-layer 3D NAND flash from their respective companies. Micron confirms their card is using QLC NAND, while Western Digital doesn't specify. These are microSD XC cards, so they are compatible with all microSD XC card readers, and both come certified with a lot of SD relevant badges such as V30 video class speeds, meaning write speeds are at least 30 megabytes per second, along with A2 app performance class speeds, indicating at least 4K and 2K random read and write IOPS respectively. Micron's card is rated for 100 megabytes of sequential reads per second and 95 megabytes per second of sequential writes, while Western Digital's card is good for 160 to 170 megabytes per second reads and writes, which exceeds what the UHS 1 bus can achieve, although other interfaces can harness that performance. Obviously, these cards aren't as fast as an SSD you might put in your PC, but that's really not the point of a microSD card. As for pricing, yeah, they're not going to come cheap. $450 for the SanDisk option when it goes on sale in April, compared to $200 for the 512 gig card. Micron hasn't specified a price, though they say their card will be available in Q2. Yet another Intel F-series processor has been spotted in a product listing, this time the Pentium Gold G5600F. Like other F models, this appears to just be a G5600 without a functional iGPU, so we're still looking at 2 cores and 4 threads clocked up to 3.9 GHz in a 54-watt package. This is a pretty interesting product for Intel to release. The G5600's main target market is entry-level systems, which don't always come with a discrete GPU, so the integrated GPU tends to be a lot more useful than in a high-end chip like the 9900K that people typically pair with a graphics card. But with the G5600F, Intel is targeting super low-end gaming rigs that also include a discrete GPU, which is a little strange given the G5600 isn't particularly great for all but the lowest end gaming. To make matters more unusual, it's expected this chip will cost just as much as the regular G5600 that comes with an iGPU. We don't have an official confirmation on the price, but so far all of Intel's F model CPUs have been priced in line with the non-F models. So you'd have to wonder why you'd buy one without an iGPU if you could have one with an iGPU, especially for a budget part. Certainly will be interesting to see how that one plays out. DigiTimes have posted what they believe are the release dates for the upcoming NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 and GTX 1650. Considering the source here is DigiTimes, I reckon we probably need to take this one with a massive grain of salt, but this news has been doing the rounds, so may as well cover it here. Anyway, their information says the GTX 1660 will be released on March 15th, followed by the GTX 1650 on April 30th. Current rumors also suggest the 1660 uses a TU116 GPU with 1280 CUDA cores and 6GB of memory, while the GTX 1650 instead opts for a TU117 GPU. We really don't have any information to share on this one, but I think it's safe to assume NVIDIA does have a few more Turing GPUs in the works, and those I expect will be released pretty soon. It's pretty hot here right now, another news corner in 38 degrees Celsius heat, so I'm just going to rapid fire the rest of these topics and get out of here. Really, there hasn't been many other topics to cover. So one interesting tidbit is AMD's new FreeSync Oasis demo. AMD did send this out to us, but I really haven't had any time to check it out. It's mostly designed for PC stores anyway, rather than for users to play with, although I did suggest to AMD that they might like to make it available to the public. In any case, what we've seen with FreeSync and FreeSync 2 HDR can do, we've already seen that in the past, so not that exciting for us, to be honest. In more storage news, Micron has released a new 1300 SSD for entry-level OEM systems using new 96-layer 3D NAND. However, it's using TLC rather than QLC, so performance should be a little better, although it's capped by SATA speeds anyway. The drives will be available in up to 1TB in an M.2 form factor and 2TB in a 2.5-inch drive, although no pricing was given. NVIDIA has also partnered with OBS to optimize the popular streaming and encoding app for their GPUs, specifically their new Turing cards. The idea is to improve image quality and lessen the frame rate impact compared to NVIDIA's older NVEnc implementation in the app. I'm hoping to check this one out at some point, but the backlog is quite massive right now. And that's it for this week's News Corner. Definitely a shorter than usual episode. Hopefully there are more interesting topics to talk about next week once MWC is over. I wasn't going to go and cover the new phones, the folding phones, all that sort of thing. There's plenty of sources that you can check out all the information about that stuff in. Subscribe to get this segment in your inbox every week. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our exclusive Discord community. And I'll catch you in the next one.